Are you in your mid-30s? Do you feel like a failure? Like you're just spinning your wheels and like you'll never reach your full potential? And you've been forced to give up on your dreams because you're a total failure who'll never amount to anything? Me neither, which is why you should definitely watch Kaiju number 8, because it totally won't invoke any of those feelings in you, nor will you relate to the main character and his obvious depression. It'll be great. All joking aside, I really do recommend this anime for lovers of action, emotion, and lovable himbos. And trust me, there's plenty of all three to be found in this treasure of an anime. So let's talk about it for a bit, shall we? Because I finally have the time to, and I've been dying to make this video for forever. Before I start though, I should specify that I'm mainly going to stick to the anime for this. While I have been keeping up with the manga and actually binged every available chapter in a day because I couldn't put it down, I'm going to largely avoid spoilers so that people can enjoy the story at their own pace. I do heartily recommend reading the manga though, it's really good. So consider this review mostly spoiler free, but I'll be dipping into some minor details here and there, and also major details with Mina, but I'll give fair warning before I do. Also, obligatory reminder to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon, all that good stuff. Please support the channel however you can. Okay, moving on. Kaiju number 8 takes place on an alternate Earth wherein kaiju attacks are a common and long-running occurrence, dating back to at least the Tokugawa shogunate era, and as opposed to the usual strategy of training a bunch of teenagers at an anime warrior school, the governments of the world have instead decided on the actually much more sensible solution of military training. I mean, there's still a bunch of teenagers, but it's an anime, so baby steps I guess, leading to the creation of the Defense Force, and joining the Defense Force is our hero's dream. No, not that guy. This guy. This is Kafka Hibino, a 32-year-old man who once dreamed of becoming the Hokage. I mean Pirate King. I mean the strongest member of the Defense Force and killing all the the Kaiju, alongside his childhood friend Mina. Yeah, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, he flunked out hard and repeatedly and ended up working for the military's viscera cleanup detail, dismantling the bodies that his old friend explodes on a near-daily basis. He's also the single most valid man in the history of anime. No, I am not taking questions at this time. Kafka's life of slicing through organs and sifting through shit is turned upside down when he nearly dies trying to save the life of Reno Ichikawa, a young man also dreaming of joining the Defense Force, who first joins the cleanup corps because he thinks it'll give him a leg up on the exams. After talking shit to Kafka,
maybe you can't relate, but you'll get it when you're older.
No, I won't. I never give up, sir. I'll die before I get it. Not that I'd want to get it.
And then dealing with shit.
Yeah, he's definitely feeling it.
The two end up in the hospital, where Kafka is made a meal he can't refuse. Don't you mean an offer he can't refuse, Writin?
Huh? Found you. Kaiju!
You okay?
No. Now transformed into a kaiju, Kafka accidentally kills an old man, and the two boys book it to escape the kaiju cops. And after overcoming some growing pains, Kafka saves a little girl and her mom, and realises he still has a chance to pursue his dream. And so he and Reno, who's just sort of become his best friend at this point, deploy together to pursue their shared dream, and everything works out forever. Okay, no, not really. But along the way we encounter Foxface, Reno's future boyfriend, Kafka getting dunked on,
I am not a fanboy!
giant monsters, the cruel reality of math,
Unleash combat power! 0%!
Huh?
a surprisingly good character, Kafka getting scolded,
Why are you exposing yourself?
sharing a single brain cell, punching things till they explode, homoerotic fan service,
Let me just put a towel down right here.
Gentlemen, why so noisy tonight? What's wrong?
Oh, nothing. Just talking about being scrawny little mantlets.
and Kafka being baby girl.
Take me as a bride now! I dare you to come back to life after that! Huh? Whoa, I didn't mean it! Please don't actually come back to life! Yeah, real mature, buddy!
Despite having literally zero aptitude for it, Kafka passes the exam and begins a new life of training and friendship and a whole lot of just being loved by everyone in the 3rd Division. Seriously, everyone fucking loves Kafka. It's kind of incredible. Eventually they get called in to handle a horde of mushroom kaiju, where the real threat is revealed to be this cordyceps looking motherfucker, Kaiju number 9, who tortures Reno and his boyfriend before Kafka goes big damn hero mode and beats Mushhead black and blue, though sadly manages to get away. To everyone's surprise, the kaiju later take the fight to the division itself, raiding the compound in the middle of the night, which allows for Kikoru and Soshiro to show off their skills before Red Guy here gets big and Mina has to put him down, leading to...
Its energy levels are increasing. They're forming an ultra-massive Yoju bomb!
The bird bomb gets prepped and Kafka has no choice but to reveal himself to save his newfound family, which leads to his arrest and subsequent trial by combat, issued by Kikoru's dad of all people. They nearly kill each other when Kafka loses control of his kaiju farm, but he's ultimately granted a moratorium and given the chance to prove himself, which is where the season ends. It's a short season, but they really pack a lot of good shit in there. There are a lot of really good characters in the show, and it does its best to let them all shine, not just Kafka. However, since it's only a 12-episode season, a good few don't really get explored all that much just yet, so we'll only be focusing on the central cast for this review. I'll be getting into the themes and other details as they come up in relation to the characters though, so rest assured this won't just be a shallow look at the show either. I do, however, want to stress that the biggest themes of the story are loyalty, friendship, and trust, and I'd like you to keep that in mind as I go through the characters. So yeah, that's all for the intro. Let's get started on the characters then, starting with...
You know you're bright as the morning, as soft as the rain, pretty as a vine, as sweet as a grape.
Okay, I know I can't be the only one who had a little literature-inspired chuckle when I first heard his name. Also, you may not like it, but this is the ideal male body. This is what the perfect man looks like. A while ago, someone asked me what my waifu/husbando was, and I gave a short list of characters I really liked. However, that was before I watched Kaiju number 8, because if I'd seen it then, I would have only had one man in mind, and this viewer is that man. I've done hard time in horny jail for this man. If Kafka was a real person, I would make it my life's mission to climb him like a tree. I love him. Okay, horny stupidity aside, Kafka is absolutely the best character of the entire show. Not only is he the funniest, most charming and likeable character, but he's also the glue that holds everyone together. And it's not just my opinion that he's extremely likeable, it's the reality of the show itself. His good-natured charm infects everyone around him, to the point that, even though they rag on him, every member of the 3rd Division fucking loves the dude. And this honestly stems pretty much entirely from just how good of a guy he is. The thing about Kafka is, completely divorced from his kaiju powers, he is the most support-coded character in the whole of the show. He kind of plays single mom to the people around him, inspiring them, cheering them on, chiding them when they don't prioritize their own safety, and providing them with nose plugs and juice because they're too dumb to realize that cleaning up bodies is fucking gross work.
Drink that. You're not gonna last the afternoon if you don't get something in your stomach.
Thanks, but I think I'll be alright.
Also, you can have these. Trust me, they're a game changer.
Sir, I appreciate the gesture, really, but no, I respectfully decline.
Just who are you trying to impress, kid? Shut up and put them in your nose!
Stop it! Seriously, sir, get off!
Yeah, the first time's always like that.
And it's almost entirely thanks to this supportive mindset that he earns the respect and friendship of those around him. Kafka cares, deeply and truly cares, for the people around him, and people can see that. Helping people really is his primary motivation, to the point that Kafka simply cannot ignore a person in need. And while this is the essence of what makes him a heroic character, it's also his greatest weakness. It's what leaves him exposed, and it's even something that the big bad uses against him multiple times. I actually really like this about him. It's fairly common for villains to use a hero's loved ones as hostages to attempt to control them, but it's really rare to see a villain like Kaiju 9 who will not hesitate and, spoiler warning, does it incredibly well. Kafka's inability to sacrifice anyone actually becomes an exploitable weakness that stems directly from his heroic qualities, and that's a sign of really good writing. Setting that aside, I really like the fact that he can't actually use the battlesuits, because it poses an interesting dilemma. See, until the point of major spoilers later, Kafka is basically the single most powerful living thing in the show, thanks to his kaiju farm, and this makes most fights where he's actually trying a relative cakewalk, even against the fungal wonder over here.
I'm in danger.
Like I mentioned in my free run review, an overpowered main character is actually kind of boring because there are no stakes, and different anime make up for this in different ways. Freerun makes up for it by having the majority of the drama be emotion focused, meaning the battles Freerun takes part in are treated as rewards rather than high stakes encounters. One Punch Man sidesteps this issue by focusing more on the supporting cast, with Saitama often arriving late or being otherwise preoccupied, which centers the stakes around whether the other pro heroes will survive long enough for him to show up and repaint the walls with whatever the threat was. Kaiju number 8, meanwhile, fixes the problem of stakes by making it so that Kafka absolutely cannot be discovered, because if he is,
you're one of the rare kaiju to get a code name, so when they kill you, they'll carve you up and build a special weapon with your body parts. If the rumors are to be believed.
That'll happen. So Kafka is forced to hold back and hide his capabilities, and this allows for the rest of the cast, Kikoru and Soshio especially in season 1, to show off their capabilities. And while he does end up exposed in the end of the season, trust me when I say they managed to keep the tension high later on. This is why his inability to utilize the suits is such a good story choice, because it means he has to find other ways to help in combat, most of which means playing support. His career in the cleanup crew is an explicit asset here, because despite being unable to fight the monsters himself, he can and does utilize his knowledge of kaiju anatomy to great effect. And this actively saves lives, something he's recognized and even thanked for. He arguably saves more lives with his anatomical knowledge than with his kaiju form, and that's actually a really cool detail. It's this, alongside the fact that he's a super hard worker and just genuinely really likable, that makes the rest of the 3rd Division fall in love with him, and it's what'll probably make you like him too. The last thing I'd like to mention, and this is actually something of a recurring theme with the core cast of the series, but Kafka's desire to assist Mina isn't driven by love, or at least not romantic love. In my Dungeon Mesher review, I went over the different forms of love and the different motivations that can stem from them, and while I do think there's a form of love in the relationship the two have, it's not been characterized as a romantic interest in any way. None of the characters have Eros as a motivation, and Kafka's far more driven by agape, the love for humanity, than anything else. I'll get into this more as I talk about the other characters, but I actually really like this aspect of the show, because not only does it make everyone feel like genuine friends driven by loyalty, and not just the desire to bone down with the hot monster man, though who could blame them, I mean look at the guy, but it also has a rather funny side effect of giving Kafka more chemistry with Soshio than with Mina, and it also kind of charges their relationship with homoerotic subtext, and it's great. You could legit ship any of the main characters with each other, and I wouldn't argue with it, apart from Kafka with Kikoru, because that's illegal and also ew. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on him for now. He's just a really good, solidly designed character. Well, you're not going to say he's autistic, Writin? Nah, I don't get the vibe. Believe it or not, I don't actually read all of my favourite characters as autistic. I read most of them as bisexual, including Kafka because I love him.
Take me as a bride now!
Pick me, I'll do it. You know, it's hard work raising a parental figure. Introduced as the slightly jerkish new member of the cleanup crew, Reno makes a surprisingly quick turnaround, thanks to getting attached at the hip to Kafka from the word go. He actually ranked 3rd in the first and, to the best of my knowledge, only character popularity poll, and it's not hard to see why. Setting aside the question of appearance, he's got one of the best character dynamics in the show, acting as the straight man to Kafka's wackier antics and attitude. And it's great because he actually goes from being the adopted son to having the biggest single parent energy in the world.
If you pull another dumb stunt like that, I'm sending you home. Okay.
On what authority, sir? I think what makes him so likable, however, is the fact that he's completely devoted to his friend. I mentioned this in my Has Been Hotel review, but I really like characters whose main motivation is complete devotion, and Reno has that in spades, with all of his actions, from his quest to become stronger to his angry babysitting of a grown-ass man, stem from that same place. His care for Kafka is so great that it serves as the catalyst for his entire character arc, and the only character who even comes close to being as important to him is Iharu, who doesn't get his own section because he's still a pretty minor character in this season, but rest assured they get pretty close. Actually, let me address that for a sec. So I know that earlier I called him Rina's boyfriend, but I was only half joking when I said that. Iharu's own character arc, and minor spoilers here, is a mirror to Reno's, and his desire to stay with and be able to assist his friend is what kickstarts his own character development. And there's simply no heterosexual explanation for it. The two actually have a really good dynamic as the series progresses, so it's something to look forward to. Back on the subject of Reno, another interesting thing about him is that, and I think it's implied to be caused by his desire to help Kafka, but he actually ends up growing into one of the strongest characters in the series. We get to see the beginning of that in Season 1, with his ability to track Kaiju number 9's attacks, with how Vice Captain Hoshina acknowledges his talent, and how, during the attack on the base, he's able to keep up with and support Kikoru. And like I said, it all stems from his desire to be of aid to Kafka. And this next part is going to get slightly spoilery, so skip to the next section if you'd like to learn this for yourself. So the reason Reno is so dedicated to Kafka stems from the moment the Yoju attacked them. It wasn't just that Kafka saved his life, though there is that. It's that Kafka reignited his belief in heroes. Reno lost his family in a kaiju attack at a young age and fell into a sort of depressed nihilism, unable to believe that heroes existed or that the world was a good place, because surely if it was and if they did, someone would have come to save his family. Reno grew up in a dark place, and it wasn't until Kafka threw himself in front of the Yoju and nearly died trying to save him that he found anything that broke through that darkness, making Kafka not just his friend, but his savior in multiple ways. It's really heartwarming, and it's what makes him more than just the pretty snark boy he's initially introduced as. Also, Reno and Iharu OTP. Deal with it.
Sometimes my mind goes shake and shake. Most of the time it does.
You know, I was pleasantly surprised by Kikoru. When she was first introduced, I took one look at her and said, "Oh goody, you're the court-mandated tsundere who's here to make the entire show worse with your mere presence. What a thrill." But honestly, viewer, I'm very happy to say that I was completely wrong. Sure, she's a complete brat through the entirety of her first episode, but her dynamic with Kafka is actually kind of hilarious, considering they kind of match each other's energy, and we get to see a peek behind the mask relatively quickly.
I do believe that makes 3. Kafka Hibino. No quitters and no casualties. Not when I'm on the battlefield.
That's not the attitude of your typical bratty tsundere, and we actually get to see the reason behind her freakout when she's pushed to her absolute limit in episode 4.
You must always be perfect for the sake of this nation's future!
I won't run away! I need to be perfect!
That's right, it's fucking daddy issues. Actually, in all fairness, her issues are pretty evenly spread between both parents, but you won't get all the details until, I don't know, either late season 2 or mid season 3. I'll get into that a little more in a bit. Kikoru is surprisingly likable. Between her role as Kafka's second secret keeper and the varying energy she brings to the show, she helps balance out the tone. I honestly wish we could see more of her, Reno and Kafka all just sort of hanging out, because they have a really good dynamic and they're always fun to see together. I would honestly watch an episode of nothing but these three just being friends. Kikoru is, of course, one of the strongest characters in the series. She starts off already beyond any of her fellow recruits, and she only improves as the series goes on. This is attributed to her lineage, with her father being the Director General of the Defense Force, and her mother having been a captain. She's honestly on a whole different level from the other members of her squad, and she's eventually only matched or surpassed by the captains, Vice Captain Hoshina, and eventually Reno after his own character arc completes. This does, of course, lend to her having a cockier attitude, but it's not an unearned one, and she never crosses the line into being unlikable for it. Also, and this could just be a me thing, but I honestly really like that she wasn't made into Kafka's love interest. Not only because she's clearly a minor and it would be illegal, but because it makes her friendship with him more interesting. There's a moment in episode 8 where he compliments her and she blushes, and a lesser anime would have made this a sign of her feelings that she's just too tsundere to ever admit, but they don't do that here. The thing about Kikoru, and this is sort of edging into spoiler territory but not really, is that she's not used to receiving praise, at least not from the adults in her life. Her father is, okay, how do I put this? Soshio Hoshina is this show's endeavour. After losing his wife, he began pushing Kikoru to be perfect and completely neglecting her emotional needs, which is a form of abuse, don't get me wrong, but he still does care for her. But it's thanks to this that she reacts like I do when I receive a compliment. It's ultimately not my place to say whether or not he deserves to be forgiven for abusing Kikoru. That'd be on Kikoru herself. but at no point does he get to Endeavor's level, where the show has to sort of soft retcon just how bad he was because the author didn't actually think through the ramifications of making one of the main character's fathers an abusive asshole. Make no mistake though, what Isao put his daughter through is absolutely a form of abuse, and he should be called out for it. Kikoru's relationship with her father is rough, but it's debatably never taken past the moral event horizon, nor does it inform her relationship with Kafka. Her relationship with Kafka is actually quite nice, as the two support and believe in each other and it becomes a genuine friendship. What's more, she actually matures quite a bit as the series progresses, and I think her personal arc is something that a lot of people are going to enjoy. Also, I think it's cool that she never loses her faith in Kafka's humanity, even when he's actively trying to kill her father. That's friendship, baby! Also, her axe is cool. More female characters should be given oversized weapons. It at least beats using a street sign.
Cat class and I got cat style.
You know, there's something to be said for a character who operates on a certain amount of anachronistic bullshit logic. So I really don't have a huge amount to say about Soshio Hoshina at this point, as the most interesting things about him are actually sitting in spoiler territory. I do, however, really like him. As the vice captain of the 3rd Division, Hoshina actually has the 3rd highest confirmed released combat power in the show at this point, with Mina sitting in 2nd place at 96% and Gen Narumi, the loser with the oversized bayonet that only comes in at the very end of the Dali Brawl, coming in 1st place at 98%. And not to give too much of the plot away, but that ranking does change before the series ends. Soshiro is honestly one of the most impressive fighters, taking on both Kafka and Kaiju number 10 with nothing but 2 short swords, and actually winning against 10 before he goes Godzilla mode. And even after that he can still cut through the monster's skin, when even Kikoru's massive fuck-off axe can't break through it. Other members of the defense force tend to look down on him for fighting with swordplay, but he has his position for a good reason. Speaking of, the actual reason he has his position, and this is where we get spoilery, is because Mina saw value in his swordsmanship, and she was actually the first to do so. The two have a really good relationship based around trust and gratitude, and it's honestly really nice to see. What's funny is that while he's good with swords, he absolutely sucks with guns, and his combat power suffers greatly when he tries to use them, whereas Mina is the complete opposite, and is only good with guns. This means they actually cover for each other's weaknesses really well, and they parallel each other on a meta level in this respect. This close relationship is another example of romance just not being a factor of the show, because it would have been very easy, and honestly somewhat expected, for Soshiro to see Kafka as a rival for Mina's affections, but he doesn't. Like I said before, Kafka and his vice captain actually have hilariously good chemistry, with Soshiro taking a liking to him right away, though still being slightly suspicious of him for good reasons. However, he comes to believe in Kafka, and even professes to placing a certain degree of faith in him. Soshiro even seemingly takes Kafka entirely seriously when he professes he's aiming for his position as Mina's lieutenant, but he doesn't hold it against him. Kafka and Soshiro's dynamic actually improves even further in the manga, and while I don't want to spoil it, there's a reason the two are a pretty popular ship. Though I will say, and this is fucking hilarious, I was checking the trivia section of his Wikipedia article, and it says his favourite things are coffee, Mont Blanc, and simple guys. Oh, the joke essentially writes itself. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the thing about Mina is, because of how little she actually shows up in this season, I'm going to be digging into spoilers basically from the word go. So this is your last chance to avoid any of that and skip ahead to the next section, because I will not be held responsible for what you hear after this point. Okay? Okay. Yeah, so Mina is kind of the origin of Kafka's entire character arc. The two were childhood friends who lost their homes and loved ones to a kaiju attack, and so they swore to become the strongest kaiju hunters together. However, Mina was found to have an unreasonably high compatibility with specifically guns, to the point that she's considered the missing link in the defense force. She's actually so powerful that it's directly stated that if she'd been a member for the battle that killed Kikoru's mother, the battle against the then dubbed King of Kaiju, the damage would have been mitigated to a third of what had been inflicted. She's so powerful that Kaiju number 9 attempts to absorb her to give him the edge he needs to completely destroy humanity. And even in his mega powered up form, she can still deal massive damage to his body with just a pistol. It's honestly kind of insane. Unfortunately, while she was a diamond in the rough, Kafka flunked out time and again. to the point that, come the start of the show, they both just gave up on him ever becoming a member of the Defense Force, which left Mina floundering under the weight of her responsibilities and with something of a grudge against him for breaking his promise, because Mina misses him and she feels lost without him being there beside her. Though she doesn't show it, Mina was completely overwhelmed by the sudden changes in her life, and she'd only felt like she could do it in the first place because she'd had Kafka by her side, because Kafka made her feel like she could handle anything. This is actually the core of their relationship, the strength he lent her through his support and how much she misses it. And like I said, she is nursing a bit of a grudge for him breaking his promise to stay by her side, but that doesn't mean she doesn't still care for him. He still means the world to her and vice versa. And Kafka, for his part, feels terrible for not being there for her. That's why he was in such an obvious depression at the start of the show, and it's why he grasped onto anything that might give him the chance to make that dream a reality, even if it meant turning into a kaiju. I love their relationship because more than anything else, they feel like siblings estranged by circumstances beyond their control. He feels like her big brother who's still coming to terms with how much she's grown, but still wants to support her however he can. It's a really sweet dynamic, and I wish we got to see more of it. When the two do finally get to fight together as equals, it's the culmination of the entire show and it's fucking awesome. I seriously cannot wait for it to be animated. You have no idea. It's honestly a shame that she doesn't feature more in this season. You know, it'd be remiss of me to make a review of the show and not talk about the kaiju themselves, which I absolutely love. I mean, I love Godzilla movies, so I was originally sold on the show based on the premise that it was about a guy who fights kaiju by turning into one, which is just the single coolest premise there is. And to their credit, the kaiju are all distinct and varied, with very little in the season being reused design-wise. Godzilla himself is an obvious inspiration for several of the larger kaiju, but a few have taken clear inspiration from other places, with the wyvern-type kaiju looking a lot like Rodan from the Godzilla franchise, and the giant Mixogastaru kaiju apparently relating to the Mushra kaiju from the Ultraman franchise, if the wiki is to be believed. Most of the more interesting kaiju don't really show up until later in the series, but I do really enjoy Kafka's design, except for one part I'll complain about later, and that of Kaiju number 9. The cordyceps theming of both his look and his powers is really cool, and fairly early on in the next season, we should see him take it even further. I honestly just really like the monsters in the show, even though some of them are disappointingly small. But hey, I'll take variants over an uninspired copy-paste job any day. Okay, so as I've said before, there's no such thing as perfection, so I do have a couple of criticisms for the show. They're relatively minor, but for the sake of being balanced, I will still present them. So the first issue, and this is only really something that'll bother you if you're the kind of person who needs everything spelled out in wiki format, but the show really isn't interested in explaining a lot of things at any reasonable pace. At time of writing, the manga still hasn't explained anything about the flying worm that fed itself to Kafka, nor has it really explained why the kaiju exist or where they come from. There are other questions that will pop up as the show progresses that don't really get answers yet either, and there are details that get brought up once and never again, like the fact that one unnamed country has been experimenting with grafting kaiju tissue into humans. This is probably only going to bother you if you prioritize lore over characters, but I still think it's fair to warn people that certain mysteries won't be answered or even really remarked upon for a very long time. The second criticism I have is admittedly somewhat nitpicky, but there's no real consistency to Kafka's powers. The crazy shapeshifting he does in episode 2 never comes back up, nor does his deflection roar from his fight with number 9. I don't think this is necessarily a real problem, it's just something that will bother people who can't handle rule of cool, which is kind of how his powers function half the time. It certainly doesn't bother me, but I wanted to include it for the sake of being thorough. What does bother me though, and this is literally nothing more than a petty personal complaint, but Kafka's kaiju form needs a fucking tail. Like, it's just got this flat ass and it feels weirdly unfinished for it. And even though I can't find it again, I swear I found fan art where they gave him a tail and it looked so much better, but I don't remember where it was or who made it and it's driving me insane. But yeah, that's all I've really got for this part. It does basically everything right. There's not much else to say. I really wish I had more to say on this anime, but it's both very short so far and pretty straightforward. The characters are fun, but not exceptionally deep, and the story is competently told and well paced. It's just a fun time, and I honestly recommend you give it a look if you haven't, because there's a lot to look forward to. Kaiju number 8 is just good. Thank you for watching, and a huge thanks to my Patreon supporters for keeping me going, especially Owen Oofs, Lustrous Lizard, and Hope's Fate. I've been meaning to review the show for a while now. I've just had other projects that took up all my attention. It's a little different from my usual pick for a Writin review, since it's pretty simple and doesn't really need to be explained all that much, but I really just wanted to talk about it, because sometimes I just want to gush about something I love. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'm going to start getting some Halloween content ready for you guys, so I hope you have a lovely day. Bye!